Authorized.
Alright, let's kick this thing off. Welcome to the iPhone 6, the official iPhone 6 screen repair tutorial. We're not going to leave anything out. We want to go totally in depth on this screen repair to make sure that you get it. First, as you saw, we turned the device off. You always want to make sure the device is off before you work on an iOS device or a repair of any device of any type. We've got a pentalobe screwdriver here, which we're going to use to unscrew the two bottom screws. Same thing with this device, the iPhone 5S, 5C, iPhone 5, even the iPhone 4 and 4S, where they've got pentalobe screws on the bottom of the device that you have to use a pentalobe screwdriver to take them out. So no different here. We're going to take them out so we can pull the screen up. If you don't have a pentalobe screwdriver, you can get them on the web. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them from eTech Parts, etechparts.com. You can get them pretty much anywhere. They're widely available. Now that we've got those screws out, we want to get something, a thin pry tool directly underneath the home button, being careful not to go super far in, but just enough in so we have some leverage. We're going to turn the phone around so we can actually show it to you and have a little more leverage here. This is the iFixit iSesamo tool. It's perfect for things like this, but you can use other pry tools for this kind of situation. We're just getting very, very slightly in there, and then we're going to sort of shimmy left and right just a little to get a little bit of lift there. And then the important thing that we do here is we take it to the side and start sliding up the side. This is more effective because we need to get leverage. We need to get that frame, the actual digitizer LCD and the aluminum frame within it, separated from the frame of the phone, and sort of running the tool along the side carefully while sort of shimmying left and right. It seems to be the best way to do that. So that's what we're doing here. We're trying to achieve some lift. We want to show that lift just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. And now we're going to pull the screen up. Luckily, there's no home flex cable attached to it like on the iPhone 5S, so we're not going to freaking tear it. So we can just open it directly up and expose the inside of the iPhone 6. Here is the shield. The shield covers all the LCD and digitizer cables and other cables. There's 5 screws in the shield. We got to take those 5 screws out. All right, so let's get a small Phillips head screwdriver and take these 5 screws out. It's interesting that they put another couple screws in here. There was really only 3 screws on a lot of the previous gen models. Now there's 5 on this shield, probably because it covers more things and needs to be secured in more ways. There's more screws underneath of it where these screws input to that are securing other things, so it's kind of necessary to have this this shield there. The whole phone is just really interesting. The iPhone 6, both the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus are very, very interesting phones on the inside. All right, so we're going to just grab some tweezers and get that shield the heck out of the way. What we expose here is all of these cables. This is the LCD cable. It's the digitizer cable. It's also the Touch ID and home button cable. Okay, it runs all the way up vertical on the device and plugs in there, and then it's the front-facing camera and proximity sensor cable as well. There's 4 of them. We're going to take a pry tool and very carefully get these out of here. This is a critical thing on the iPhone 6. You got to be extremely conscious when you are taking these cables out, not to bend them, to warp them in any way, because they are extremely fragile cables. As you see, we're just very, very nice, very, very quickly and swiftly, but also very carefully taking those cables out. Now we can push the frame out of the way, and we've got the digitizer LCD assembly that now we've got to disassemble because we have to reuse a lot of this stuff. Alright, so this is the speaker hold. It's really just a small panel that goes over the speaker in the front-facing camera. It's got 3 screws in it. We got to take those screws out so that we can get that shield the heck out of there, so that we can get underneath to get to that speaker. We forgot for a second that there's another screw right there to the right. There's 3 screws there. There's 3 screws that you have to take out to get that shield the heck off the phone. So take those 3 screws out. Once you've got the 3 screws out, take some tweezers or your fingers, grab that shield. It comes directly off just like that. It lifts off. You can place that aside. Place it with the screws preferably. Alright, now we've got the front-facing camera that we have to kind of remove. This thing is interesting. It just folds to the left, as you see. We're just sort of folding it to the left. That's all it does, and exposes the earpiece speaker, which is directly underneath it. If you notice those 4 copper connectors, those springs connect with the connectors. We're going to grab that earpiece speaker out. It just literally was sitting there, so we grab it with some tweezers or your fingers and get it the heck out of there. Next, right there where we're pointing is part of this front-facing camera proximity sensor cable that we have to get up. You could use a little bit of heat. I would go something like 200 degrees, not for a long period of time, to get it a little the adhesive kind of lifted, because it is adhered. Or you can take a pry tool and just sort of do what we just did there, and lift that at cable up and get underneath the adhesive that way. We've got most of this lifted, this front-facing camera cable, but right there is the other part of the proximity sensor that we've got to get underneath of it. We really got to be careful here because, again, these wires are super fragile and they can tear. So we're going to take this small iFixit tool and just get underneath. That's all we got to do. We just got to pry it up. The entire assembly now comes off. That whole cable, which controls all those functions, comes off, and now you got to just set that thing aside. So the next thing we want to do, as you could imagine, is we got to take the screws out of the perimeter of the device. There are 6 screws on the right-hand side of the device, 3 screws on the right, and then 3 screws on the left-hand side of the device that we've got to take a Phillips head screwdriver and get them out of there. Almost done, almost there. These screws, again, you want to put back in the order that you pulled them out in, so you remember where they are and how they're going to go back in. It's always a smart idea to do that throughout the entire teardown process. Okay, now that we've got those screws out, we're going to move on to. We've got a couple more things that we have to take off of this screen assembly before we can put the new one on. The first is going to be the home button shield. That shield covers the home area. It covers the part of the flex cable that has to do with the Touch ID. And so we're just going to take some screws out, one that's sort of on the frame, and then 2 that are directly securing that shield down. They are also Phillips head screws. They should be the same, nearly the same size. At least you can use the same screwdriver to take them out as a lot of the other screws on this device. And then just like the earpiece speaker, just like the earpiece speaker shield, this shield just kind of just pops right off. It was just laying on top of the home button. This is a critical area right here. This is the home button. There's a home button flex cable right there. Is the cable on the home button that we have to unplug. We got to unplug that cable. That's actually just the home button itself. Of course, it is the Touch ID too, but it's only part of the Touch ID. We're going to unplug that. And how this works, it's 2 separate cables. It's the cable that's underneath of that cable that's just sort of laying flat on the frame, and then there's the cable that we're sort of pointing at here that we have to lift up that's attached to the home button. It's essentially the home button flex cable, which also controls the Touch ID, at least partially. So we're going to get sort of a close-up on that so you can see exactly what's going on. All right, and take note on how we separate this flex cable. We're just going to get slightly underneath of it right there. Again, you can put a little bit of heat on it, 200 degrees for a very small period of time to get it unadhered. And then that's it. We lifted that part of the flex cable up. We're going to stick our finger through the other side and just sort of push on that home button. It's slightly adhered, and so that we can get the whole thing out. Now you can see it separates the difference between the flex cable on the home button and that flex cable that's still there, that input connector right there that's still there on the device. This runs vertically up the aluminum, that little mid shield, to the top, and is one of those cables that we plugged into the board by the LCD. This is where it goes. It actually goes in this shape. It's like sort of shaped that way on the mid shield, and there goes that's the cable itself. So we have to get underneath of that cable. It's a little tricky, and you can tear it, so you got to be super careful. Luckily, we've got an awesome tool to get underneath, and we just got under there and pried it upward. Now that we've pried it upward, now we can actually proceed with removing the frame, because we've got everything up, and that cable is now unadhered from the frame. If we would have tried to lift it, we would have ripped it. Touch ID would have never worked again, and we would have been in a world of hurt, as my former military life has taught me that phrase. Okay, so we're going to take the shield off, and that's it. That's the assembly. That's the old assembly. You're going to do whatever you're going to do with the old assembly. Grab your new assembly. They will probably come assembled at some point, but for now they are not coming assembled, and forever you can probably buy them unassembled like this. and just reuse the parts. That's some kind of convention in most with most repair companies, and certainly with most DIY situations. Okay, so now we're going to put the shield back on. We're going to do everything that we just did in reverse order, and just do it all super carefully. Seat that cable down. That's kind of the primary thing that we want to make sure that we get done, and that thing is seated and back in place. Now we're going to put the home button in. Again, it goes in just how it came out. You really want to be careful. You really want to align this correctly. For everything to work correctly, everything has to be aligned. And it's pretty difficult sometimes because the home button will want to like go in crooked. It's just hard to get it perfect. So you see us sort of fussing around with it, trying to get it perfect. Make sure you do the same thing. A quality repair, a lot of the time, has to do a lot with alignment. All right, now that we've got that thing secured, we want to then secure this home flex cable, the part of the cable that's going to attach to the other part of the Touch ID cable that runs vertical. We just seat it down. It plugs into those two white grooves, as you see. And if you've got the device in front of you, you can see those two small little white upward pointing prongs that this home flex cable is going to sort of seat into. And now that cable, as you would imagine, has to get folded back over, as you see we're doing here, and plugged back in to the Touch ID sensor cable, which runs vertical. Now we're good to go. Okay, so next step is to put that shield back on the home button. Not rocket science, just putting it back on the way that we took it off. There are two screws that screw that thing in. We're going to, once we get this thing aligned, put those two screws in. That's one screw. Now we've got the other, and then we're going to put this last screw in, which secures the frame. So really, I guess the frame has 7 screws. We just sort of situated that in the area of the home button, because it kind of is the home button area. And now you want to test it. Make sure your home button presses, make sure it looks right, make sure it feels right, it's got the right amount of pop. Now we got to secure the frame, the rest of the frame on with the perimeter screws that plug into the mid shield. And again, there's 6 of them. They're small, so pay attention and get them back in. As you can see, we're having a little trouble on some instances of putting these screws in because they are incredibly small. You probably will have trouble too. Ha! But you'll get through it. All right. So we've got all the perimeter screws securing the mid shield in, and now we want to move toward the top of the device and get all the components assembled on the top. We'll start with this flex cable, which controls the front-facing camera and the proximity sensor. It's sort of folded and twisted in a strange manner, I know, but as long as you put everything back in the right order, the cables just sort of fold in place. And first is going to be that small little mic-looking thing. Sort of looks like the mic of an iPhone 4S, if you've ever seen one, back in place just how we have it there. Place it and press down on it so it re-adheres to the frame, re-adheres to the screen assembly, and now you can proceed with folding the rest of the cable in its appropriate place because you've got that straight. So we're going to take this part of the proximity sensor, just as we unadhered it from the screen before, we're going to fold it back over, put it in its place, make sure everything fits the way that it fit when you took it out, so we can make sure, again, that the alignment is straight because it's so critically important on this device and on every iOS device. All right, so we've got that part of the cable folded and aligned. Next thing we want to do is put this earpiece speaker in. It just aligns over the 2 holes. The springs are pointed upwards so that those copper connectors on the front-facing camera cable can go and touch them. And we're going to fold that camera cable directly over. Right, once you've got that camera, the front-facing camera in the camera hold, or in the camera area, the front-facing camera hole area, and you sort of have everything held down. You want to hold it down with your fingers so we can get this shield over the top of it, and secure that shield in. Everything aligns. Make sure the holes are aligned. Everything looks aligned. You'll know when it's aligned, and then get that shield on as soon as possible, and get the screws that secure it in there. Alright, that's screw number 2, and then let's not forget about our third screw on the right. Alright, we're almost finished here. The iPhone 6 repair is not the hardest screen repair to do. It's a little, depending on how you look at it, it could be a little slightly easier than the iPhone 5S screen repair, based on how the technology is situated and made. So it's kind of interesting. And that's it. We've got the entire front assembly put back together now. Everything's in good shape. Everything's secured. We've tested it all. It's aligned well. We want to make sure of that. And now we can put it back onto the device. So here's the frame. This is the frame of the device. We're going to flip the digitizer LCD assembly around. And again, around this area, you just have to be really, really careful. Don't push in too hard. Make sure it's totally aligned. The cables are totally aligned before you push in, because if they're not aligned and you push in, you could bend the prongs on the cable. We gave a thumbs up there because we realized it was completely plugged in and totally plugged in and aligned before we fully plugged it in. Same thing with the cable to the right there. The digitizer cable now is going in, and we should be good to go. We've got all these cables in. Again, run through it all if you really need to make sure that they're secure. Make sure they're totally aligned before you push them in, and then push them in gently and carefully. You got to kind of feel your way through it. Now we're going to put the shield on, as you may imagine, and the 5 accompanying screws that secure the shield. Almost done. One more. We're actually putting this one in with tweezers because on previous models it hasn't been magnetized, or a little harder to magnetize, for probably good purpose, and so we had to put it in with tweezers as just sort of a habit. Okay, now that we've got this thing secured, we want to close the device. We are ready to close the iPhone 6 after having performed a successful screen replacement. We just want to align all the edges, make sure it all looks correct, it's all going into the same place as you would just imagine, and then plug everything back in place. It should just sort of fit in. It should seat back into place. As long as everything is aligned, the mid shield is aligned properly and screwed in, then you should be good to go. And then again, as you can imagine, we're going to put these pentalobe screws in and secure the rest of the repair. And they go in pretty easily. Alright, so now we're going to turn the device on, make sure everything works, test it out, and we're done. Thanks so much for watching, folks. Remember, if you've got iPads that break and you need them to be fixed, we have an awesome mail-in process that does it. It's super quick, too, and we're using all original parts for this stuff. And check out our other tutorials. We got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of tutorials happening, and we appreciate you coming. See ya.